Okay, we're going to invite up, I think, the Open Notice and Docracy folks concurrently. Does that work? Since you're...
I think it's separate, but the Q&A can be together.
Okay. Okay, right.
Good. I'm here to present Open Notice. Open Notice is not a company, not an association. It's like a natural collaboration between different entities, consortium of initiatives, I call it. And they care about privacy and transparency. And basically, we were together to solve a single problem that where notice is both terms of service and privacy policy are closed, meaning there's no common structure, no common location, written by lawyers, you don't understand them, no one reads them, legal terms are not localized, and they're too long. So it's just a terrible problem, and everybody's trying to solve them. And this is like a map that shows how many people are trying to solve this. Like these guys are actually, you can see us there, but also rating services like terms of service didn't read, or privacy advocates. It's a little bit of everything, and everybody's trying to like solve a piece. So we were like, let's just bring it together, and if we can collaborate, we can facilitate stuff like, not repeat efforts, collaborate better, and be sustainable. And in particular, we want to do bigger, better projects rather than just everyone in our own little ecosystem. So our first big project is pretty big. Like, what if you didn't, if you never had to read a privacy policy again, provided that you did actually read it at least once, or that you finally know what you're agreeing to, or like you know what you are agreeing to. Everything is safer, everything is most transparent, and if you're a company, you don't have to pay a lawyer to write a basic set terms of service, and you don't have to. I'm not going to say this word publicly because I don't know, but you can be fair with your users. Let's say that. So this is what we thought. What if we could have a Creative Commons for privacy policy and terms of service? Please, I apologize for the design of this. It's just very, very rough right now. But we already started working on this. So the phase one to create this one single standard is just gather all the data we can find about terms of service and privacy policies. And we are already collaborating. Like all these guys that you see on the left, they have a database of all existing privacy policies and terms of service and their history. We are currently data mining them thanks to Docracy's secret algorithm. I'm not going to say anything, they're going to explain it to you. But with the help of this algorithm, we're going to come up with what's already there, what's the standard, what people are using, and then we're going to curate it. Like, okay, let's make it fair, let's make it, let's analyze it, and let's make it so that everybody can benchmark, for example, its own terms of service with this ideal standard, and people can adopt it and work on that. And the possibilities are really endless right now. So with this data and with the help of technology, you can do pretty much everything you can imagine doing with privacy policy and terms of service. So redesigning, put icons, benchmarking, make even machine-readable terms, which is something very, very futuristic. So imagine like you don't have to read that because your computer reads the term of service for you and decides, okay, this site is good, you can use it. Yeah, this is like very, very futuristic, and so that the power of this project is really can be huge. That's why we like it. If you like it so much as we do, you should join this group. It's like free. These are all the people who are here. I see New York legal hackers as well, so that's good. Come to me afterwards, or just join the Google group because the discussion are up, and we also do some calls monthly to organize work. And side, if you are a Brooklyn Law student and you want to work on this project, let me know.
I'll find you someone.
Okay. So I'm Jonathan Docracy, Matt's going to drive. So this is just a prototype. This is something, a tech demo, something we haven't released yet, and we're still actually working on it. But you might enjoy it. I'll try to go quickly through this since you might be legal teched out. No, I'm not, but you might be. So what we've done is, as Veronica alluded to, we've taken a bunch of privacy policies, about 650 of them, And we've run this algorithm, which is actually inspired by sequence alignment in biology, genetics. And I have a background in that, and Matt does a bit as well. And so the idea is to sort of like, let's find the similarities in all these documents, let's just sort of pull out the common clauses and the common things using these sort of sequence alignment algorithms, which are end up being a little more interesting than just sort of maybe searching through these docs, just looking for common search terms. The idea is to really sort of try to pull out things that are a little bit closer to semantic similarities. So maybe the one to look at first would be like the Twitter privacy policy. So here's sort of, if you view one of these privacy policies in sort of this system, maybe just start scrolling a bit, you can see as the green text, the darker the green, that means there's more, a larger number of policies that have similar text to that. And go down a little further, actually, I think. Maybe the thing about the cookies, if you can find it. There it is, yeah, maybe somewhere in the darker area there. So here's an example. A lot of privacy policies discuss cookies, you know, and but they all do it a little different way. Some of them leave out things, others add things. So if you click maybe in like the, somewhere in that cookie zone there, you can see there's a whole bunch. Actually, we're only showing 10, but there's actually a lot more. We just sort of cut it off to keep it simple right now. Yeah, so there's, this is actually a really big one. I guess because we can't really fit it on the screen. Yeah, it's a little ugly.
Not a lot of pixels.
Yeah, I don't know, for some reason this is like, we're set to like a 1996 resolution here.
Legal meetup.
But anyway, yeah, I don't know if you can see where you are there, Matt, but yeah, we should be looking at these things side by side, but we're not seeing them side by side.
Hit Apple minus.
Can you maybe just like try to change this resolution?
What's that?
Hit
Just go
Apple
for
minus
it.
on the browser, make the text smaller. The resolution
Apple
of the
minus.
projector is maxed out.
Oh, it is?
Yep.
It's still not working.
One more.
It didn't do
That's
squat.
not gonna do anything.
Sorry.
All right, I guess we can't. So we'll look at one column, you have to imagine the other. So what we should be seeing sort of is side by side, one policy versus the other. And the blue text is sort of the text in common, and the red is the difference. So the idea is you can, if you click on this cookie, so you can say, oh, here's in one side, I can see they've written it this way, they've included this whole business about the persistent code that remains if you close your browser, and the other side, which we will never see, doesn't have that part. And so this is the idea, you can kind of explore around and click through, and then you can click on these other ones and view that text in context and sort of browse around that way. If you go back to the home page of this thing, I guess it's not, we won't go and look. Oh, can't get to that. There we go. Can you refresh this page, or is it text? Well, yeah, let's just,
What do you want?
I guess just click, well, click on the Apple one, the view, view in place. So yeah, just maybe another example is we have this like, the children, don't collect personal information with children. There's a lot of real different versions of that. Some talk about if it comes to their attention, others like if you inform us that data is there, then we'll delete everything. So that's another example of something that there's many different versions of, and there's actually probably about maybe 50 different sort of variants of that. So this is sort of that way of sort of cruising around and exploring.
You can sort of see it here, even though they're not side by side.
Yeah, so yeah, there's sort of the vanilla version, and there's a little bit more detail there. So we envision this, so one way we envision this being useful is if you're drafting, if you're making your own privacy policy, you can kind of explore a database like this and sort of see how things are written and see if you're missing something in the draft that you currently have. Another thing which we think would be interesting is if you have a really large database, if you do a whole bunch of deals of a certain type at your firm or whatever, that you could load all that stuff in, sort of like here's our whole firm's history of deals we've done in the past, and then when a counterparty sends some new document to you, that you would ingest it by the system and sort of find what's the de novo stuff, the new stuff versus the stuff that's complete boilerplate that you've seen a million times. You can immediately sort of highlight and say like, oh, this is the stuff they worked on and it's completely different. Whereas the rest of this is to the generic stuff that we've seen a million times. So sorry, it doesn't really sort of look terrific in this view, but that's sort of the idea. I could show it to you. I mean, we're running this off my computer right there, so I can show it to you if you want to see it afterwards. There's also, we can also pull out sort of the top kind of most common clauses and just sort of build clause databases with this thing as well.
Is there a clause link you want to show?
Yeah, you can refresh this page here maybe, or it might not. Yeah, you click on that, that might actually look okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, so so here's, so here's sort of like we pulled clauses out, the classic, if you have any questions or whatever. So we have sort of 23 examples of different versions of that. Or the, if you scroll down to the one that's going to get the A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, yeah, like this, that's a really common thing. If they're required to disclose personal information by law. But even that, if you click on that, there's a bunch of different versions of that as well. And so you can kind of look around and say, oh, what version is appropriate for my policy, or what am I missing? That's it. Thanks.
Could you explain maybe some generalities? I'm not so familiar with the algorithm you're referring to that has to do like gene sequencing. I've done millions of times where I use like Microsoft Word to compare documents where it was nothing more than seeing if the identical phrase was dissimilar from something else. Does this algorithm work where it's just looking for maybe the words in a different order, or is it contextual?
Yeah,
those question and inquiry is the same word basically.
Yeah, so just to describe it, so to get an intuition for it, on the biological side, an example where you would use a sequence alignment, which is what the algorithm we're using here essentially is that you might have sequenced a gene in like a mouse genome or something like that. And then you say, oh, is there a similar gene in the human genome? And you know that if it's there, it's going to be fundamentally the same sort of text, the same basis, the same DNA basis, but there'll be changes. So that sort of similar intuition here, where it's like, oh, is there a clause about not storing, data for a child under 13? You're not looking for exact phrases or anything, but you're looking for almost like the skeleton of that text. Like so we can pull up dramatic differences from that. It won't be like exactly like a search text. They can use slightly different terms, but we'll see that the structure of what they're talking about is essentially the same. There's a keyword aspect to it, but also really like the phrasing, like the similar phrasing discussing it. And so we found in our experience it really works well. It feels like it's, obviously it's still kind of a dumb sequence alignment algorithm, but it feels like it's grabbing more of a semantic vibe there, because often quite different wordings will still align and match up. It's like, oh, that's a really different version of how that is said, but it's similar enough that we're able to pull that apart. So rather than it being like a keyword search, it's more looking at the structure of a larger paragraph.
Is this something that you had to sort of invent, or was something you were able to adapt?
Yes, I mean, it really, it began with an adaptation of BLAST, which is like kind of like the most standard sequence alignment algorithm. It started kind of there and then departed as we got into the vagaries of sort of English language and how to optimize it for this setting, where there's, the set of words is huge, whereas in DNA there's 4 letters, and that's it. Words, maybe a protein, which are 3 letters.
Hey, I've got many questions, but an easy one. Can I compare terms of service from the U.S. with ones that come from Europe or other countries?
Well, I mean, if you start translating, it would probably get a little hairy.
Well, let's say they're all in English, but you don't have them tagged yet. Terms of service like country of origin.
We have
that would be cool.
Yeah, so you could throw them all in there and see what lines up and see how different. So we're really, we're just trying. Right now, it's just sort of like a big dumb database of text. You could put in, we could put this not even privacy policies in there, just completely different text, and certain things might still jump out.
Then consider this a feature request more than a question.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, yeah.
Similar note, are there provisions for it? It sounds like you could sort of take a couple of different agreements or a couple of different policies, put them together and make this comparison happen, or is this more of an ongoing process where you identified a couple hundred different policies, but are there provisions to look at either versions, so somebody updates their policy and what's actually been changed from the previous, or are there ways to look, if there's, as you pointed out, Eric, that you might want to look at different countries and how they're handling it?
Yeah, this prototype is more about sort of comparing one or more documents to sort of a large database, and saying what's common. I mean, like Docracy already has kind of that versioning tech. Like we have really good differencing software, thinking about that stuff. So this is related to that, but this is more about this more database-wide thing. This idea of having a big corpus of text and then saying, what have I seen before? How is this different? And so we envision, yeah, for that sort of reviewing side where you get a document you don't know about, we were thinking kind of like almost like an inverse view of that green view where it's highlighting the things that are new, you know, the things that, oh, in all your firm's history, that text has never shown up before, you know, and that might be as simple as just the name of the companies involved, or it might be a whole paragraph they drafted that they sat down and wrote from scratch. Whereas all the usual stuff that's boring, you know, or at least you just expect to be there would just be, wouldn't be highlighted, so you would sort of know, like, okay, that's pretty standard.
And then one last thing is that I was thinking when you were showing the age 13 or below, obviously COPPA's being updated at the end of the year, but people are going to be scrambling to update policies and change them to whatever, so being able to version and show those changes could be a really interesting.
So exactly. So right now we don't sort of do anything special to support like sort of the subsequent versions, but that would be a nice thing to say, like, oh yeah, this aligns with like an old version, but not the latest, or whatever. There's some extra sort of work to do there to nicely integrate versions with this. But yeah, that's where we are with it now.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, a big thank you to Docracy and Open Notice.